I'm Jordan Peake, and this is the breakdown of my remix of Stopover Goa by Christian Burkhardt. So Christian got in contact with me through Instagram. We started chatting a bit, and it was great because I've always been a fan of his music. I play a lot of his tracks in my DJ sets. He asked me if I wanted to do a remix for him. And luckily, there's one track from him that I always play, which is called Spread Your Legs. An amazing name. And he asked me to do a remix, and I was hoping he wasn't going to ask me to remix that one because I don't know what I would do to it. Like, I like everything about it, I wouldn't change anything. He said, I have this track, Stopover Goa, would you like to remix it? And I listened to the track. This is what the track sounds like. First, I want to talk about inspirations and ideas behind the remix and the tracks, which is something that's really important to talk about. Sometimes you can go in and have a complete fresh idea, not know what comes up, and just have a play around and see what you get. Sometimes you might already have an idea or some elements that you want to do. These are important because if you say that I always have to go in with something pre-planned, then you're limiting yourself. The more avenues you're open to, the more kind of methods you have of working to get the result, I think is better personally, and it's how I've always worked. It just gives you much more options and frees yourself up more. A lot of this remix was based off a old track that I play a lot and is an anthem still, which is Double 99 Rip Groove. I still really love that. It still goes off to this day. It's an absolute timeless anthem. When you break down the elements in that, it's very percussive and it's very bass heavy. There's no chords, really, there's no melodies. Apart from the breakdown, you have some melodic elements. It really is all about the drums, the bass, and then some vocal samples. So my remix sounds nothing like Double 99 Rip Groove, but the elements and the ideas and the kind of understanding of the style is all heavily inspired by those kind of tracks and that. Sometimes I make more tracks with more melodic elements, and sometimes I play on my sets. Sometimes I make more just drums, sometimes more drums and bass heavy. It all depends. Like, I think it's great to make a lot of different kind of styles and that. I don't believe in limiting yourself to just making like certain things. Another feature that I want to talk about is putting hooks and putting different musical motifs and riffs in there. Stuff that's going to catch the listener, keep them engaged, but then adding all the little changes in. 3 tracks I'm going to reference and give you examples of. One's a rock track and 2 are dance music tracks. But you'll notice when you actually break down the elements and what's there, the musical motifs, the bass line or the main riff or the lead, it's still one note. It's still not one note, but it's still one motif that carries the entire way through the track. But there's all little slight variations and changes, whether it's from the velocity or the intensity or the sounds opening up. But it's still one riff that it keeps going back to and growing and evolving. One is a classic track that everyone will know is the Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes, an absolute anthem. We all know that bass line. If you don't know it from music, you've probably heard sport chants with it. That's how good it is. That whole track is that bass line. But you hear there how there's an extra guitar layer coming and it's given more emphasis on a high upper register. So it's not just the bass line, it's now like a higher lead guitar. But it's still the same notes with some slight variations. You see how it's still that same motif, it's still the same riff. That is obviously rock music. There's no reason you can't do that for dance music. There's 2 tracks I really love and play a lot and are massive admirers of the producers themselves. One is Elements by Pryda, who is also known as Eric Prydz, or Cirez D. He has many different aliases he's used over the years. But again, it's one repeating riff or motif. When you skip through the track, you'll hear it's the same riff, but there's slight changes musically and techniques-wise to keep it engaged. So it's not just literally that same riff constantly. See how I've skipped through there quickly, but that's the same riff, but the sound has changed differently from whether it's the filter has opened up, so it makes it sound brighter and louder and noisier, versus here, there's probably a low part. I'm obviously not 100% sure because I'm not Eric Prydz, I'm not a genius that is Eric Prydz, but the filter is probably lower on it to give it that kind of muted tone. But it's still the same riff that you've heard through the track. See from those quick sections, it's still the same, but it's kept engaging. This is important because you need to catch listeners' attention with something hooky and something memorable. It's easy to sing along to words, we can all kind of repeat them, but I think sometimes musical genius can be when people can walk away and they can still hum those riffs or still repeat them like in the back. Another track that I've always loved and always played and will never leave my USBs or record box, whatever I'm using, is a track from techno legend Steve Rackmud, Moog on Acid. See there again, 3 different songs, one of a completely different genre, but both of them have the same riff, whatever it is, carried throughout the whole track, but with technique differences to keep them engaging and to keep it from just staying flat on the same level. That's exactly what I tried to do with this remix. As you'll see, the bass line is one of the main motifs and the main hooky elements. It's predominantly the same throughout the track. It changes in the breakdown to a different instrument, creating some variation with the filters and adding like interest. And then it goes back to the original bass line with the other hooky elements, which will be the looped vocal sample that I used that was in the original, and hopefully some other percussive elements. As like I said, like the Rip Groove track, which is drums, bass, and some vocal stabs. That's literally the same as what I've done with my track. So my process for doing a remix is always to listen to the track first. See what elements are in there, like so whatever the drums are doing, whatever the bass line, and all the elements basically, that's whatever's there. Either work out beforehand what I'm going to do to them, or just go in to my studio and have a play and see what I come up with. These are all the parts that Christian sent over. So these are all the individual parts themselves. Yeah, cool. So these are the parts that Christian sent over from the original project. This is the bass line. That's the vocal.
It's all about the dance. I don't care what anybody says. It's the dance. Release in the dance. Release in.
So when I heard that, I knew straight away that's like something I would do in my tracks anyway. So I was definitely going to use the vocal for sure. There's some other parts I used. I didn't use that. I used this. Which is like an old kind of hip-hoppy like breakbeat drum loop. And there's another vocal I used which isn't that. It isn't that. Where is it? No. Can edit all this out, it's fine.
Mother Earth is pregnant.
Ah, here it is. It is that part.
We all have knocked her. Mother Earth is pregnant for the third time.
So again, I'm listening to everything and I'm building my head. What can I do with this? And already with that vocal loop that he sent me, a track that I always love and is a massive inspiration to me, Armand Van Helden remix of CJ Bolland, Sugar is Sweeter, which came out years ago but still works and still is amazing. And it just works. It's amazing. It's club records. It doesn't have to be super complicated. It just sounds so nice, sound decent and groovy and work. And yeah, so with that, release in the dance. Release, I'm like, that's the inspiration for that. I already knew the kind of style I wanted. I did a remix for Alexis Raphael this year on Crash, and that was a kind of a speed garage record. Christian said he really, really liked that, so I knew already, okay, if he likes that, I'll go in that direction. The breakbeat section, the drum loop, when I heard that, there is an old Rhythm Masters remix that I really, really like, that I play a lot. That has a very, very similar drum loop in it, but that's right at the end. That's right at the end of the record. I really personally like records, like dance records, even though I play house and techno and things like that, which is very 4x4, which is the classic. I do like playing some other stuff where it changes the pattern up, so it's not just for hours on end. I do like some records where you get a different pattern, so it could be like, so it changes it basically. So this is my remix. Here is everything basically. From the top. So those drums is this drum loop I found from an old record. That's the full loop. What I did was I chopped those drums up and rearranged them, which makes it sound like this now. I also added some extra percussion on top. I think it's just a snare. I think it's just, if you've heard any of my records, I do these kind of snares a lot. Oh no, there's an extra hi-hat as well. But sometimes they're so subtle, but they really do make the difference and fill it out. So this is just the drum loop on itself, with the extra percussion. And this is a very, very simple record, but sometimes simple is just all you need. So extra shakers as well. So yeah, it's a very, very simple record. But sometimes, like I said, simple is good. And if you listen to Christian's track and you break it down, it really is. It's a basic drum groove with like a bass synth and not too many other layers. But sometimes for clubs, that's all you need. That bass line was actually inspired by Gillette Short Dick Man. It's the one I forgot to set up beforehand. I always knew there's like about 7 different things beforehand. So that bass line, I always loved this sound. I actually saw a friend recently who's a drag queen, and I not had heard this record for years, and they performed it in their set. When I'm listening to it, I was like, oh, I've always loved that bass line. I should do a track with that soon. So that's that bass line. That bass line was made in... Where are we? Here we go. So it's a VST, which is VST literally stands for Virtual Studio Technology, or I'm not sure that's the exact acronym, but they're basically software emulations of actual hardware and synthesizers. This is one I use a lot, called Sylenth, and again, it doesn't matter what you use. It could be a stock one that comes with your program, it could be something you've bought. The only thing that matters is if you know how to get the sounds and the tones that you like out of it. This one is just a basic square wave. It's a super basic, again, but sometimes that's all you need. Just as important as the sound is the notes that it plays. In here, if we have a look at it quickly, I'm not musically trained at all. I couldn't tell you what key this is, whatever. I just always go by ear. I play it in and think, does that sound good? And something I heard, and I can't remember if I read it or where, but I saw an interview with Nile Rodgers from Chic, incredible, legendary producer of so many hit records. And he says a bass line's good is if you can hum it back and people can like re-hum it. And so I try to make my bass lines that are very mid-rangey, or I want them to be noticed. I try and make them as musical as possible and hooky as possible. So you could easily hum this back. That's it. Ba 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 ba. And that is literally the whole bass line for the track. That's literally it. Something that's important as well is giving stuff space. This is obviously quite an aggressive, harsh track. But you see how much space there is in between. Like 2, 3, 4. So even there, if it would give it a completely different feel, there's no right or wrong. Like, it depends on what you're kind of making. But if I looped it, so it's this. To me, that sounded like a bit full on. So I knew where it's quite a heavy bass, I wanted to have that extra pause. It's a little difference, but these little differences, they go over a lot. So anyway, that is basically the track. It's the drums, the bass, the vocal comes in, there's some extra percussion, as I played here. We'll skip to the first main break. Actually, something I just realised about the bass line is, because a lot of you will ask about the sound design. A lot of it depends, again, the sound design and like music production anyway is like a very big, broad topic and term. It doesn't matter if you use a sample. It doesn't matter if you create everything from scratch. Some of the best stuff is generally a combination of both. This one is, because it's just a simple sound, it's a square wave set into mono, like lots of bass lines with mono. A little bit of portamento, which gives it a certain glidey kind of feel. A bit of filter envelope with cutoff. And then there's additional processing, some saturator. If I take all the processing off, it sounds like this. Sounds like this. Saturator. Distortion from an amp. Little bit of filter, and then the sidechain from Kickstart 2, which is just an easy way to sidechain stuff. If I take the no, I don't need to bother talking about that. No one gives a fuck. So, from the first break.
Just turn around. Whoever's standing next to you, put them on the dance floor with you. There it is. Whoa! You see, it's all in the dance. I don't care what anybody says. You can have a breakthrough on the dance floor. Release. You're gonna make your release in the dance. 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 In the dance. In the dance. In the dance.
So that's it. That again, like I said before, going back to that Alex Party Records, the Rhythm Masters remix. Which had the similar breakbeat loop in it. I wanted to use the breakbeat loop during the first breakdown. There with the vocal.
Just turn around. Whoever's standing next to you, put them on the dance floor with you. There it is. Whoa!
So that's all in full. And then it was just finding a loop point. It was just finding a loop point to use, and then when it drops back, the beat hole drops back in.
You're gonna make your release in the dance. 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 Release in the dance.
Something I'm really, really conscious about, and I put a great deal of effort into and tell people all the time, is arrangement. You can have the most basic elements for a song, but the arrangement is really, really what makes it. And knowing how long stuff should be, when they should come in, even little things to most people this would be so subtle. It's obviously the vocal is looped. It's a looped vocal, so we're using that. So it's released in a dance, in a dance, in a dance, but here it changes to that release part goes out.
In the dance. In the dance. In the dance.
So even though you're just taking one part out, it still changes in a way, and it still creates a bit of contrast. Everything's contrast. You need to keep your tracks moving, whether it's through automation. Automation is moving the parameters for a synth and things, or even if the loop itself changes or the sound itself changes, it just creates a bit more interest, and so it's not the same things over and over. It still is very repetitive, don't get me wrong at all, I know that. But it's all these little slight changes that takes your music, and then hopefully it like steps up to the next level. Something I'm really conscious about as well is the extra little details, is like fills at the end of a bar. No different to like how you'd hear like a traditional drummer. So like traditional drummers like that's the basic groove. Then at the end of the bar, or whatever. You should be doing that in your dance music and electronic music as well. Doesn't have to be a drum fill, it just has to be any kind of fill at the end of the bar just to keep the interest. Here is something I do a lot. It's just a reverse section. That's literally it. So it's as simple as finding a section here, going into Ableton here and pressing reverse. So this is straightforward. Press reverse. That's reversed. It's something I do a lot. It's just, it works. Here, an extra ride comes in. If you've ever listened to techno records and house records and especially stuff by like Mr. G, you'll have heard this sound a lot. not that one. You'll have heard this sound a lot. Also another cowbell comes in on the offbeat for where the hi-hat would be. So all together, the drums. Again, it's just an extra little sound to add in that fills it out more. Out of the vocal he sent me as well, I always try to create these little extra dubby fills in my tracks. Not always, it depends on the track, of course, depends on what you're making. But there's lots of, like there's this sound. Stuff that maybe kind of on its own might sound a bit weird to a lot of people, but it's these little extra details. So that laugh as well, something I like using a lot in my stuff. Just a laugh on its own, but it kind of works. If you listen to a lot of dance music over the years, you'd hear at the start there's like a crash sound. Basically that vocal is doing the same thing. It's letting you know that this is a new start of a bar. But again, you can use different sounds in that place. It's just, again, it's something to sing at the start of a bar, another extra sound that fills it out. This here, I'm big on my transitional effects, and like I say, so this is a transitional effect I've made, similar to a kind of riser. If you've ever listened to dance music, you'll have heard those noises that during the build-ups, ooh, creates the tension, everything's tension release. This is a very similar effect, but it's using this vocal here. How the effect here is something I do a lot. The way I've done that is this effect using this echo, this delay. If I turn the echo off, that's it, it stops. The echo, there's also echo delay, it's very similar. They just kind of do a slightly different job, and it depends on what you're after, the kind of sound. See how it creates that extra space, it repeats the note constantly. The way I've created that is simply set up a new channel, find the channel that that's coming from, so in this case it's number 15, records that when it plays. You can see here Ableton now is recording all the audio information from that channel coming through. The sound stopped ages ago, but it's always good to have like a little bit more. Here it's simply a case of finding that sound, change this to Complex Pro or even turn the warp off, it depends on you. Sometimes it'll depend on how much your computer can handle. But simply taking that sound and reversing it. I turn the grid off so I can move it to where it needs to be. Turn that off, turn that one on. Narrow. See how now we've just made that super quick out of this one like thing. And it's all these little transitional elements that takes that basic loop, it adds a little extra sound effects and it fills it out much more. Back here. There's an extra percussive sound that comes in. So again, this whole track is very percussive. It's very drums and bass orientated with some extra vocal stabs and all fill it out. So all these little extra percussion that comes in, they're just all little extra hooks to again fill the track out. This is this. This is actually a sound I was using in an older track of mine I haven't put out yet. It's something I was working on. And this is what I tell everyone now is until like you have a track or a remix and it's out there and it's signed and it's in the public domain for people to buy, not illegally download, people to buy, support the artists, nothing's ever finished. Like nothing's ever finished. It's actually a song I was working on here. Is it that one? No, where is it? Bish Bash Bosh. What was it? Oh no, it's not Dance Machine, it's Machine Funk, that's right. Yeah, so this was a previous song I was working on that I had like saved up. These are all the elements from that that I've... There it is. So all these little sounds is that I took from it that I might use, reuse again or use differently. That song's not out yet. It's not finished. Well, it is finished, but it's not out at all anyway yet. But when this was coming up during the writing process, I was building up. I got to this part and I thought, oh, okay, it needs someone else to come in. So I was like, oh, it just wants something extra percussive. So I went into all the stuff I've done. And I thought, oh, that would be great here. Here it is here. The original sound is this. The original sound is this. If you can hear, it's got a little extra bit on it. Here we go, it's the delay. It's so subtle, but sometimes if that's what you want for the track, it's what it's whatever you want. So here's the extra part. The other part I used from it. It's the vocal that he sent over to me. Just chopped up and used rhythmically like a hit. Okay, so that's that part. Now I know I'm heading towards the main breakdown, where all the drums come away. This is what it sounds like. Oh, thank you. Okay, so there's a lot to break down in this little part. Because again, a lot of people say to me, "Oh, you're really good at your drops, and your drops are really good." But I tell everyone, your drops are only as good as your breakdowns. Like they matter so much, and it's all these little details that go up to make something that's really, really effective. if you'll notice, if you've ever heard like club records and stuff before, the breakdown beat is where everything kind of comes away and it creates that space. And then finally you have the build up, and then it all basically the drum beats come back and it hits home, and that's when people start dancing again. Not every track you do, and not every track you play in your set has to have a drop. It has to be that, but you still want to create interest and contrast in those sections. So again, it just doesn't sound like the same thing like the whole time. There's time for some of those kind of records, but again, like it depends on you and everything. The way I've created this is you'll notice that for this section here, there's no drums whatsoever. What that actually is it's that bass line again, but it's sent through another synth doing a different kind of sound. And it slowly builds up. It's actually made using this from Arturia. This is a different VST. It's an emulation of a Vulture I never know how to say it. Vulture easel, which is a great synthesizer. All these synthesizers, I mean, you don't have to know how to use them like a master and stuff. It's just kind of, it helps to know kind of what sounds are good with which and everything. And a lot of them can kind of make the similar kind of sounds. But I saw a video for this and it had a kind of sort of metallic-y like sound, and I really liked it. And again, just played with it. It's literally doing the same from here. But because it's a different sound, it creates a bit of texture. When I said to you about automation as well, you'll see I've recorded it from audio. The reason why is I try and bounce a lot of stuff to audio. Because there's benefits that you can get from putting stuff into audio. You can chop it up more. You can do quick reverses like I showed you. You could even, if you want to, I'm not going to do it for this track, you could pitch things up and down. So you can get cool like fills here, and then it can drop here. So even just like this. So you can create loads of different like interests and get rid, if that's what you want for the track. This track didn't need it. I already knew that with this, it wasn't just going to be where this bass line stays the same the whole way through. That's it. This sound, it uses the filter, and it creates a different kind of texture. See how it starts out very low pass? Something you'd have heard in, like, again, lots of dance records and techno records. A classic technique is to have the riff and start out wow. It's just classic and it works, and it's one of those that use it, do it, it works. I knew I wanted to do it with that. So when I use a lot of VSTs, is something I limit myself to do is, like I say, I will record the sequences and then bounce it down so I know that, right, can't use it anymore and stuff. And it forces me to kind of work like how if I had like an old studio and like lots and lots of gear. Because sometimes it's good to limit yourself, because you could tweak and you could rearrange, you could go back, you could change this forever and ever and ever and ever. And sometimes it's good to put limits on yourself. So you know that, okay, this is all I need for it and everything. So it's just something I do. I've just started doing it a lot, like for different numerous reasons. One of them is that if you notice, Something I like in a lot of records, and especially when you hear in the club a lot, is just when you have the kick drum and the bass section, and I love it. If I took the vocal away, it sounds like this. No. If I took the vocal away, it will sound like this. So this, there's so much to talk about in just this little section alone from like a sound design like ring. So the whole breakdown is, I think, 32 bars long, which works out about a minute roughly if we're going by house music standards, just because of the BPM range. The first 16, no drums at all, to give that, okay, we've been dancing for ages, this creates that break, this creates that sense of space. When I start looping the vocal, the bass line, not the bass line, the synth that's taking the place of the bass line. That comes in with the kick drum, and that's when I put the side chain back on. So as you'll notice from here, you can see, again, that thing I use a lot, kickstart 2. If you see here, it's off. Here. It creates that pumping effect, which, again, it's a staple of dance music. If you've ever heard Satisfaction by Benny Benassi, the synth is the classic pump sound. Eric Prydz, Cool on Me, the track is very, very pumping. A lot of classic French filter house by the likes of Daft Punk, they would heavily compress. It's just a staple. And it also helps create room for your kick and bass lines to give them space. Because not only in the terms of the sounds you make, it's also getting those sounds to sound good. So they sound full and they're not cluttering and getting in the way of each other. And the kick drums and the bass lines, they share a lot of the same space. And if you're a DJ or you've ever been in a nightclub, you know yourself, like you will have heard DJs take the bass out with the bass knot, wait for a bit, maybe add a snare roll in, and then they put it back in. And it's when the bass comes out, people start dancing. So the low end, which is your kick drums and your bass lines, they're so important for club-based records. So important. So you have to kind of prioritise them a lot and make sure they sound good together. That extra cowbell hit, that comes in as well. And also, if you listen to the cowbell on its own, it's got a reverb on it. You probably get the idea where this is going. It's just all these techniques to help build the suspense. Again, tension release. You create that tension, and then the drop is obviously the release. And that's what creates the excitement. This is a classic, is if I take the reverb off, just that sound. This is what automation is, like I said, like create that parameter. So the decay time here, you'll see the mark. It builds up, it creates that space. And then actually, it doesn't even drop in like when here. So I haven't even needed to use it here because I'm very conscious of when your main drops comes in, I see that kind of like as a reset in a way. So you don't need all the elements again, you can slowly start to build them in. And that way you can have all these like little single one hits and they can constantly come in and out of the track. And again, that's arrangement. It's knowing when to bring stuff in and not. Because this section here, you've heard it already. I always call this the go home section. 8 times out of 10, like 7 times, again, there's no rules, but there's general kind of guidelines and stuff, is that this last part after the second breakdown, everything that's in here, You'll have probably heard earlier in the track, nothing really new is coming in here in this part. It's basically after the drop, after the main breakdown and drop, everything's coming back. So again, it's constant ways of how can we use these elements, how can we keep them interesting, how can we keep them engaging, what tricks can we use that we've heard in dance records before that kind of, it's known why to do them. Like, you know, there's certain tropes. Again, you don't have to do this in every single record, and it's better if you don't do it in every single record. It's just understanding, do they work for this song? Am I going to use it? Do I like doing it? Even just before the drop, there's some little bits I need to show you about. So with this build up, we have the vocal loop going. We have that synth, and we have that cowbell. What happens here is that drum loop, I've used it here again, but I've high passed it, so again it's there, but it's there, but the bass elements are out, because again, that classic of, okay, have the bass out, have the bass back in. Something I've noticed with a lot of big breakdown records, because again, I've done them before, I'm guilty of doing it myself and stuff, is that I make records for the club and for people to dance, and I obviously want people to dance, and I hope they dance like it as well. But sometimes when you make records with a big breakdown, when there's no percussion behind it, people literally stop dancing because they don't know, you know, they don't move to it or anything and stuff, because there's no rhythm, there's no metronome like to keep them going. You can still create breakdowns where there's something behind it, like I said before. So here we just have the main kick drum. So here's a drum loop. Basically, it's letting you know, okay, we're building up towards something's coming, but it's got the filter on, so it's not dropping. It's not fully there yet. So here again, like I used earlier in the track, is the reverse just before we get to the part where it's going to drop back in. You get the reverse, and the filter comes off to let you know that, okay, it's coming. And this is my little signature now that I've started doing a lot of my stuff. One of my friends, a few friends like I speak to, they've all got different little nicknames for me. And one of them, when I answer the phone, he goes, peaking, like peaking. And I was like, oh, I like that. I could use that in a music, so I could use that in my music somehow. And it's basically a little producer tag I have for myself. If you listen to hip hop, there's a lot of guys, so you know it's them that's made the beats. They put their own little names in and little tags, and it's something I started doing for myself. Even a couple of guys who I really like Basement Jacks, in a couple of their songs, it's just people just saying Basement Jacks and things like that. And one of my biggest influences ever is a guy called Switch, and he also released under the name Solid Groove. And if you listen to his stuff, a lot of his records have got Switch It and Switch. So when you hear it, you know it's Switch. And something Special Request does as well. He puts a lot, Paul Wolford Special Request, he puts that in his. So my producer tag is the phrase or the word peaking, just before the drop. That's literally me in my iPhone saying peaking, and then I've pitched it down. It's here. That's it. I've got a lot of other different ones as well I've made, so it doesn't have to be the same sound over and over. But it's basically just something like, I don't want my stuff just to be faceless. I want you to know it's me, and it's all little different ways that you can put your personality and yourself and your influences and your tastes and that into your own music. And there is a lot of times when people can just Shazam your stuff. Now, especially now, because Shazam's incredible. But the time difference in it takes from making a song to when it gets out there. Sometimes it can come out really short. A lot of times it can take a long time, like just because of these things happen, these things come out. You know, it happens in all aspects of life. But this way, you can always know if it's a Jordan Peak track or a remix, because you might have heard, oh, there's a peak. It says peaking. Oh, okay, so that's who that is. So I've got that one. I've also got a lot of other clips I found going through films and movies. Where are they? Yeah.
Peeking.
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 Peeking on someone?
Peeking.
Peeking?
Peeking. Peeking. Peeking.
Peeking. Peeking. Peeking.
Peeking.
So again, I can chop them out and use different ones basically, or I can start getting some friends to say it. But yeah, that is like one of my little trademarks. So if you hear that it's by me. But then that's, like I said, that's arrangement wise, that's everything. Like the track's done, it's now into the final section. And that's it. Like I said, nothing, all in this section, nothing new has happened at all. There's no new musical elements. It's literally everything has all been heard before. That doesn't work for every song. Like every song could be different. And a track that I really, really like, I think that has a really, really interesting arrangement is Robin, what is it? With Every Heartbeat. Because generally how songs work is that the chorus will be the most part bit, because a lot of people will be like, oh, so what's that song that goes like, generally that's the hook part. That song With Every Heartbeat, the hook, which is a name like, doesn't come in right until the end. So that's one case where it's very, very different, like very, very different. Like I said, there's no rules, but generally there's guidelines. So sort of 7 to 8 times out of 10, nothing new is really happening here. It's just basically reintroducing all the stuff you've heard before. For DJs, because this is important if you're making club stuff, because you need to be able to mix in and out. Notice I haven't talked about intros or outros yet, which is basically the part where you mix the drums in and out. But a lot of that is super simple. Like, don't get focused on that too much. Make a good 3 to 4 to 5 minutes. If you're doing club stuff, it's different if you're doing radio stuff or if you're doing pop music, whatever. But even then, that doesn't matter as much, because you can, who says you can't do this kind of stuff with pop music? It just changes. But make a good 3 to 4 minutes, and then literally put some drums at the start for a minute or 45 seconds and some drums at the end for 45 seconds. And that's all you need. You don't need anything majorly musical happening in the mixing part, because DJs won't want it. Even if you do, say you put like a paddy bit start of the section, like where it's just synths, there's no drums, a lot of DJs will literally make their own version, or they'll take that and they'll just skip to where the drums are, where they can do it. So again, the opening drums are literally... And that's where I talked for so long, we actually ran out of battery in the camera. Thank you to everyone that's watched this. To anyone that makes music, I hope you learned some little tips and tricks that you can try on your own stuff. My remix of Stopover Goa by Christian Burkhardt is out now to stream and download. Thank you. Please like, share and subscribe, all that kind of YouTube malarkey. Much love, Jordan.